Hi, this is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and in today's video I'm going to be teaching you how to crochet the Boba Tea Crochet Pouch, which is a free pattern you'll find on mooglyblog.com. Please go to the link in the description where you'll find the written pattern as well as right and left-handed video tutorials for this pattern. Or simply go to your favorite search engine and type in Moogly Boba Tea Crochet Pouch. To make this pattern, I used a USG 4mm crochet hook. This one is by Susan Bates. And I also used Lily Sugar and Cream yarn. I used 3 colors, warm brown, rose pink, and white, but of course you can use whichever colors you like to make this project your own. It's also handy to have stitch markers, and if you'd like to add the face as I did, you'll also want a pair of safety eyes, or you can simply embroider them on with more yarn. I also recommend having plastic canvas. I cut a 2.75 inch diameter circle, and that goes in right at the bottom of the pouch to help it stand up. This, like the eyes, is optional. You'll also want to have a little bit of craft glue. I used Aleene's tacky glue, but you can use whatever you have on hand. And you'll also want a 6-inch zipper for sealing up the top. In addition, some white sewing thread and a sewing needle to sew in the zipper sure will come in handy. So let's go ahead and get started making our Boba Tea crochet pouch. First, let's take a quick look at the finished Boba Tea crochet pouch. Here you can see the front with that little face. I used safety eyes for the eyes. These are about 13mm, and a little extra of the brown yarn to add the smile. Again, the face is totally optional. And for that matter, so are the bobas, or the little bubbles down here. If you're not a fan of bubble tea or boba tea, customize this pattern to fit your own favorite beverage. Leave these off, change the colors. You can definitely make this very simple project your own, because as you look closely here, all of the stitches in this project are single crochets. So this is a wonderful pattern for beginners as well. We start at the bottom with the pink, work a flat circle, do 1 round in back loop only, and then simply crochet up the sides. Most of the rounds are worked even, but there are just a few rounds of increases to help it give it that cup shape. Of course, we need to make lots of little circles for our bobas or bubbles, which are then appliqued on separately. As we work up, we add the bobas, then we add the face, and then we finish up the top. A few rounds of white add to the cup look to it, and are also perfect for sewing in our white zipper. The zipper is made to look like the straw right here by just adding a few rounds of crochet that are then glued right over the zipper pull. So let's go ahead and pull it open and look inside. You can see here I hand sewed in this zipper, and I'll be honest, while I'm pretty good at crocheting, hand sewing is not my primary talent, so let's not judge me on the straightness of this line. But I simply did a back stitch all the way through. I did one side of the zipper, then sort of added, I used the kind of zipper that comes apart all the way, so I put the zipper back together at the end, and then went in and sewed in the other half, which was a little bit trickier, but just take your time and you can get it on there. You can see it actually opens up a little bit wider here. So again, with white thread, it doesn't show up then. I just sewed all the way through. There is white thread there, but you can't really see it. It just fades right into the yarn. So we sew in the zipper, and then of course we've got our nice tall pouch. And if you look closely, you can see there at the bottom, there is that plastic circle. Let's go ahead and pull that out for a moment. This is simply plastic canvas. You might be familiar with it from your plastic canvas crafts, other crafts like that, but it's honestly got lots of great uses for yarn crafts. I love using it for projects like this. Now, if you don't have any plastic canvas, you can cut a circle of cardboard instead, or whatever, bit of plastic detritus you might have lying around your house. I do like using the plastic because it doesn't bend like cardboard, and if it gets wet, it'll just dry off and be perfectly fine. By adding this little circle to the bottom of our pouch here, it just adds a little bit of extra solidness and stiffness, and I just push it all the way down right in there, and that's it. I don't glue it in or, tie it in or sew it in or anything like that. It just sits right at the bottom and then helps the whole pouch to stand up nice and neat. You can see it stands up even completely empty, just like that. The other thing I did was after I added those safety eyes, we'll go ahead and pull the pouch right out here. You can see just how ugly my stitching is from the inside, but it looks so nice from the outside. That's the part that counts. But one other thing I did do to the safety eyes here, you can see after I put those safety eyes on, I melted down the sharp ends. I just used a standard household lighter, held them up against the ends for just a couple seconds, and then used the metal part of the lighter to add a little bit of pressure, and that melted and squished down the ends of those safety eyes. Now, this is obviously something that should be done by adults or under supervision, and because you are melting plastic, make sure that you're in a well-ventilated area. So let's go over the stitches for the Boba Tea Crochet Pouch. So the first thing to make is all those boba pearls or bubbles. Again, these are optional, so you can skip this section if you like. I made about 25 to 30 and just sort of appliqued them on the way they wanted to sit on the cup, so you can make however many you'd like to make, depending on how many bobas you like in your cup. So I'm going to use the warm brown color here, and each one of the bobas is all made the same, and they're all just one round. So I'm going to start with a magic circle. I go over the forefinger of my non-hook hand twice towards me, just like that. Then I insert my hook under both of those loops and grab the loop that's furthest back, closest to my knuckle, and pull it just under the edge of the other loop. You can see how I've got these strands secured in my fingers right there. Then I yarn over and pull a loop through, and that secures my hook, or rather my loop, all together. So then I can begin my stitching. I chain 1, and then I'm going to work 6 single crochets right into the ring. For each of these single crochets, I want to make sure that I go under the loop that's around my finger and that tail end that's sort of hanging out right there. Then I can go ahead and make my single crochets just as I normally would. So there's 1, and with that I can pull my finger on out of the way right there. That'll hold our loop nice and open. So there's 1 single crochet. We need 5 more. So there's our second and third. And you just want to take your time here and make sure that with each of these stitches you're going into this ring and under that tail end as well. We want to make sure both of those are enclosed, because that is what will allow us to close up that magic circle or magic ring. So I'm just continuing to make my single crochets here. I think I have 1 more. Make this one and then get them counted. There we go. Let's see. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's exactly right. Then what we're going to do is go ahead. I've got this active loop pulled up nice and big, so it won't come out on me for a moment. We're going to take our tail end here and give it a pull. You can see that cinches up the center of that ring, just like magic, hence the name. And then, rather than joining with the slip stitch, I'm going to set this down for just a moment and grab my scissors. There we are. Gotta have scissors if you're crocheting, right? I'm going to pull that loop down just a little bit closer, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut my yarn, but I'm going to leave it a little bit longer, so I'm going to use this tail to sew the boba onto the cup. So I want to leave it a few inches longer than I might otherwise do. Then, with the yarn end cut, I simply pull up on that loop, so now the end is free. And now I grab my yarn needle and put that end on the yarn needle. And I'm going to do a seamless join or seamless finish to finish off this, so it's got a nice round smoothness here. So I'm simply going to go under the top 2 loops of that first single crochet with my yarn needle, just as I would if I were going in there with a hook, and pull down and pull these ends together. And I always like to just sort of sort out all those strands with my fingers a little bit, and then I go right back down in the last stitch there that we came from, right into the center, and pull that closed. Now these are small enough with just the one round. You can kind of use your fingers to push those top loops to the outside of the ring. And you can see you get a really nice, perfect looking little bubble or boba right there. A perfect little circle, whatever you wanted it to be, an eyeball, a beach ball, whatever you're looking for with your circle. In this case, it's our little bobas. So then I'm going to leave this nice long end, and then when I go to sew it onto the cup, I will go through, of course, the cup, holding the bobas on the outside, and simply go under 1 stitch all the way through the cup and the boba, and then go down into the next stitch, and then go through the fabric of the cup as well, and then come back up through the next one all the way around, and that secures it to the cup. Then I can weave my end inside the cup and it's perfectly hidden. So on the outside, we just see this part. So if you want to go ahead and weave in that center end before you sew them on, you can do that, or you can use it to help sew them on to the cup if you prefer. So just make a whole big pile of these, and then we set those aside and get started on the cup. So then you pick up whatever color you want the majority of your cup to be. I used pink, but I've seen boba in green, purple, blue, basically any color of the rainbow. So you pick the color you love best. We're going to start the same way. We start at the bottom of the cup and work our way up, and we start by making that flat circle that sits against the table or wherever we put it down. So we're going to start again with our magic circle towards me over my finger twice, just like that. Insert my hook, grab that second loop, pull it in front of the other one, yarn over and pull through a loop, and then start crocheting. And our first round is exactly the same as the boba. Chain 1 and then 6 single crochets all into the ring. But this time we're not going to cut our yarn. We are going to join and keep crocheting. So there's our first one, 2, 3, and just as before, I'm sure to go under that ring, but also make sure that that tail end is captured inside each of these stitches. Otherwise, pulling on it to close up the ring will not work. The magic disappears from the magic circle. So let's see how many stitches we've got here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's perfect. I am going to still take that moment to close up the ring here. There we go. I like to kind of stabilize it with my fingers and give it a real good tug. This yarn will break if you pull hard enough on it, so don't pull that hard, just hard enough to get the ring to close up there. And then we can leave that hanging out and weave in that end later. When you do weave in this end, you want to make sure when you weave in the end from the magic circle itself that you weave it in both directions. That will keep the magic circle from opening back up on you. So now I'll get my hook right back in that loop there. Now we want to find that first single crochet we made and join with a slip stitch. This is a smaller hook than I normally use with this yarn, and you can see it makes really tight stitches. For a pouch like this, that's what we're going for. We don't want a lot of drape, we want stiffness, and crochet is really good at that. The trick is just to use a smaller hook. So if you find that with your personal tension, which is just a factor of personal hands, and everybody's hands are different, feel free to switch down to an even smaller hook if you need to, or if you find that these stitches are too small for you with this hook and you just can't get your hook in there, feel free to go ahead and move up a hook size. Everybody's gauge is a little bit different, and the gauge is listed in the pattern for you to check it against. So let's go ahead with all that said and move on to round 2. We're going to start with a chain 1, and then, like I say, we're doing our basic flat circle here at the beginning. So for round 2, we work 2 single crochets in each stitch around. Round 1 had 6, so that means round 2 will have 12. And again, we do want these stitches to be relatively tight so we get a nice stiff fabric and a nice stiff pouch that continues to stand up on its own. So there's 2 in 1, 2 single crochets in one stitch. Now I do 2 single crochets in each of the remaining stitches around. So we should go from 6 stitches in round 1 to 12 stitches in round 2. And I'll see you when we get to the end of round 2. For round 3, we continue on with our increases. We chain 1, and now we're going to put 1 single crochet in the first stitch. So that should be the one you joined to. Always the hardest one to get one in there. There we go. And then 2 single crochets in the next stitch. And that is our pattern all the way around. Let me get that second one in there. So then we do 1 in the next, and 2 in the next after that. 1 and 2. 1 in the next, and 2 after that. Get that little tail trying to join us out of the way here. And that is our pattern for round 3. So at the end of round 3, we should have gone up by another 6 stitches, which brings us to 18 total. So I'll see you as we get to the end of round 3. So this is what the bottom of the cup should look like at the end of round 3. We have 3 more rounds that expanded all the way out to 36 single crochets total. Let's make one more of those together. Round 4, we chain 1, and now we start with 2 single crochets in the first stitch because we want to move around those increases to make sure we don't end up with more of a hexagon than a circle. So we've got 2 single crochets in the first stitch, and then we single crochet in the next 2 stitches. So there's 1 in the next, and 1 in the next after that. And that is our repeat for round 4. 2 in the next stitch. So there's 1 and 2. And then a stitch in each of the next 2 stitches. So there's 1 and 1. And these again, all single crochets for this pattern. Let's do that repeat one more time. 2 to get 2 in the next stitch, 2 single crochets in the next stitch here, and then a single crochet in each of the next 2 stitches. 1 and 2. So that is our repeat for round 4. For round 5, we single crochet in the first 2 stitches, 2 single crochets in the stitch after that, and then single crochet in the stitch after that. Round 5 is a little different because we split up those increases. Again, this is all done so that we don't end up making a hexagon instead of a circle. So really, as we expand our circle, as it gets bigger, we're really putting just one more single stitch in between each of those increases. Basically, that's how it's done. So if you refer to the written pattern, they'll spell it out, but basically we want to make sure to increase by 6 stitches of each round until you have a total of 36 stitches around in round 6 for the base of your cup. So I'll see you as we finish up here for round 4. So here you can see we've gotten to the end of round 4, and here is the base of the cup full-sized. Round 5, the repeat is single crochet in each of the first 2 stitches, 2 single crochets in the next, single crochet in the next. So we do that all the way around. Single crochet, 2 single crochets, single crochet, single crochet, single crochet, 2 single crochets, single crochet. That's our repeat for round 5. For round 6, the repeat is single crochet in the first stitch, 2 single crochets in the next, single crochet in the next 3. So it's 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, all the way around for round 6. That should get you to a total of 36 single crochets as seen right here. After that, we move on to the sides of the cup, and this is our one round that's worked in the back loop only. You can see that little ridge of horizontal stitches there around the base. By working the next round in the back loop only, it helps push the sides of the cups up away from the base. So let's go ahead and do that right here together. We'll pretend we're ready for round 7. Round 7 is worked even. We just chain 1 and back loop only single crochet in each stitch around. So let's talk about that for just a second before we actually make our stitch. When we look at the top of any crochet stitch, we've got those 2 loops. If we turn it this way, you can see how it makes a V. That's how you can tell that's the direction we're working in. And when we look at these top 2 loops, the one in front is always going to be the front loop. The one in back is always going to be the back loop. And that's relative to you, or in this case me, the crocheter. From my perspective, this one is closer, so it's the front loop. This one's further away, so it's the back loop. If I were to turn my work and work from the other direction, now this would be the front loop and that would be the back loop. So for this round, we are simply going to back loop only single crochet in each stitch around. So that means we insert our hook right at the top of that V, right in between the loops. Normally we'd go here, now we're going to go here, but we need to start over here in this first one we joined to. So we just want to put our hook right in the between there, so we just catch that very back loop. Then we pull up our loop, yarn over, and pull through 2. There's our first back loop only single crochet. And then we just do the same in each stitch around. So we just make sure to catch just that back loop and make each stitch all the way around. 1 in 1. We aren't increasing or decreasing at all in this round. So you should again have 36 stitches at the end of round 7. And then at the end, we'll just join with a slip stitch. So I'll see you when we get there. So here I am at the end of our tiny round 7. You can see that horizontal lines showing up, and now that I've joined, the sides really want to be able to sort of stand up away. You can see you can kind of use your fingers and fold it up a little bit. You can see just how nice adding that little round there really makes our circle want to sit nice and flat. And of course that right there is where we will press up our bit of plastic canvas, or again cardboard. If you've got a little plastic recycling, you can cut out a circle to match the size of your circle there at the bottom. Should be about 2.75 inches on the full-sized bag. or pouch rather. So here is round 7. Round 8, we simply chain 1 and single crochet in each stitch around. Again, we're just working evenly, and that's what a lot of the sides of these cups are. Just chain 1 and single crochet in each stitch around. However, there are just a few increase rounds, and one of them comes up right away in round 9. This is the same as the increases we were doing down here. We're just not increasing as many stitches in each round. We don't want a great big wide cup. We just want that gentle increase. So for round 9, we single crochet in the first 8 stitches, and then 2 single crochets in the stitch after that. Single crochet in the next 8, 2 single crochets in the next stitch, then do it one more time, single crochet in the next 8, 2 single crochets in the next stitch. That will bring us up by basically 4 stitches in the round. So that brings us up to 40 stitches total. Then rounds 10 through 19, see right here, we're just single crocheting even again. And then that's where you want to take a break. You want to get up to about round 19 or so. Should be right around, we'll say right around here. I could try and count them up behind the bobas, but I think that would be pretty difficult. But you'll get up to about here or so on the cup. And that's where you want to go ahead and take a break from crocheting the cup. Put a stitch marker in your active loop, like that, so it won't come back out on you. Get a stitch marker in there, and then sew on your bobas. You don't want to wait till you've made the entirety of the pouch height-wise before you sew those on. You're going to have to put your hand all the way inside the pouch, and it's just going to be a whole lot more difficult. If you stop not quite halfway up, like I say, after about round 19 or so, then you still have a much easier time sewing on all these bobas. I didn't really have a plan when I started sewing them on. I just started at the bottom row, realized they spaced themselves out pretty well there, decided to go ahead and put a second row on, and then just add a couple extras all around. So you could really fill it up with boba, add just a couple at the bottom, whatever you like to do. Again, that part's totally optional. If you're not into bubble tea or boba tea, just go ahead and leave those right off. Then we do a few more rounds. We do one more round of increases here in round 20. Then we single crochet 9 and then 2, 9 and then 2. Again, just a little bit of an increase there. And then a few more rounds. And then you want to stop there and go ahead and add the face. Again, it's just easier to add it before we have all of that height. These are simply some safety eyes. I have lots of safety eyes in my collection here. So these come in lots of different sizes. You could absolutely do bigger safety eyes if you wanted to, smaller, really give it a distinct look however you want your boba to look. You could even use some of these colored ones if you want to. There are tons of them on the web. If you haven't tried out a safety eye before, here is my little pouch where I keep all my backs together here. Let me pull one out from the bag. And this right there is what the backs look like. And essentially, I'm not sure if I have the right sizes here together. As you can see, there's different sizes depending on what size of eye or nose. I also have noses in here. Lots of fun stuff. But basically, you grab your fabric here. You insert your safety eye. I like to go between stitches. Push it through. You want to make sure the eye is on the outside and the post is poking to the inside of your project. And then you simply slide the backing right on over. And if you push that all the way down to the top, if you don't hear a click, you'll at least feel it, and it will be on there nice and permanently. After that is when I took the lighter and just melted that very tip of it. Let's get over there so it's easier to see. Melted the very tip of it and pushed down on it. Like I say, it's not super scratchy, but it's not necessarily something you want rubbing against your hand when you do reach into the pouch. So to add those eyes, I added them to approximately, looks like rounds 23, 24. So that means this is round 23 and this is round 24. And I just eyeballed, no pun intended, where I wanted those two eyes to be and what I thought looked pretty good. Then I took just a little bit more of that brown yarn and added a very simple smile. You can see right underneath. Wove those ends on the inside and then continue to single crochet right on up. When we get to round 31, we have one more increase. Should be right somewhere closer to the top there. Right around here, I think, or so. We'll eyeball it right there. And then rounds 32 through 40, we go ahead and finish up our pink right here. Again, we're just single crocheting in each stitch around. For the top of the cup, I added 3 rounds of the white. Again, all just worked even. I joined right to the first stitch and simply single crochet in each stitch around for 3 rounds, and go ahead and break that off. I use the seamless join just like I used when I made the bobas. After that, all that's left to do is to slide in that circle of the plastic canvas, and you can hold the plastic canvas right up against the bottom of your project and see where that line is, and that will tell you right where to cut it. And then, of course, we need to sew in our zipper. So the next step is to sew in your zipper. Now, I found a 6-inch zipper, fits perfectly across the top of this pouch, but if you've changed the size of your pouch by changing the number of stitches or using a different yarn, then you may need to measure and purchase a zipper specifically to fit your pouch. Now, you can see I also chose white, which blends in really well here. Again, if you want to use a different color, you can, but you'll want to make sure to get matching thread, and of course, you'll need a sewing needle. And then I simply hand sewed in that zipper, as you can see with the little line right there that we spoke about earlier. Now, this particular type of zipper comes apart, but you can use, again, whichever style you prefer. And you want to make sure that when you go to install it, that the zipper tab is going to be facing up out of the pouch. And depending on what side you want it to lay on, make sure you put it in that way. Right now it's open. When it's to the right, when it's to the left, it will be closed. So, like I say, you just want to make sure before you start sewing that you're putting it in the correct direction so you don't accidentally have the fabric on top. We don't want it to be sewn in above the zipper. We want the fabric to be underneath the zipper. And again, we want to make sure the tab faces up out of the project. So once you've sort of got it figured out, you can see this one would be on the back half. And then this one we would want to sew in on the front half. So simply, I lay it inside my pouch like this, and start with my yarn, not my yarn, but my sewing thread, and start doing a back stitch right across here. Just eyeballing it, trying to keep it in as straight a line as possible. And I do go all the way through the yarn. You really can't see the thread on the yarn unless you go in with some sort of magnifying glass. Now let's go ahead and just take a few sample stitches here on our little swatch that we've been working up in our circle. Now, when we go and flatten out the top of our pouch like this, like I say, I like to use a couple of stitch markers to mark those stitches at the end just to make sure it didn't get twisted off of my face so that it stayed nice and flat where my face was. You don't have to worry about where that last stitch was exactly. It should be about the middle of the back, but the main thing really is to make sure the face is facing front there. So you've got that flattened out. Simply insert your zipper half here, and then we start sewing it in. So let's pretend that this is our top of our pouch right here. I want to make sure that the teeth sort of match up with the top of the pouch, or maybe just even a little bit below. And like I say, that our fabric is pointing inside the pouch itself. Then you can simply take your already threaded needle here and start sewing right through. And I just like to do a simple back stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and insert my thread on my needle, and I'll go through both the zipper and through the fabric itself. Now, when I'm sewing the actual zipper in, again, I'm doing it with white yarn on the outside, so this will disappear. On this yarn, you will be able to see it. So I simply went through, and then I'm going to come back to where I was before. So you can see this is where I went in. I'm going to go back that way, pull that through, and now I go over. So you can see I went in that way, I came back from the outside that way, and now I'm going to go this way. That said, every time you pull your thread through, since we're hand sewing here, double check. This has actually disappeared pretty well, I will say, into the pink, but you want to make sure you haven't accidentally left any loops. If you've done a lot of hand sewing, maybe it's just me, but a lot of times I didn't pull it through properly, and I end up with a little loop on the outside that then I have to fix. So take your time and make sure you don't get those. So now that we've pulled back through, we're going to jump to the other side of where we initially went through. And push that again all the way through to the outside. Make sure we give it a nice tug so we don't get any loops on the inside either. And then come back, splitting that difference halfway again. I do have a separate tutorial for the back stitch done with yarn, so it's a little bit easier to see on the YouTube channel if you'd prefer to look at that one. But again, I'm just going to jump ahead, kind of that. You can see that's where we came back through this way. Now we're going to jump ahead this way, and then come back up halfway through. and that's the back stitch. So you can try and pin in your zipper if you want, or as you sew it, you can simply kind of keep an eye on it, use your fingers to adjust it, put it where you want it. Let me do a couple more stitches here. We just go through, give it a nice tug, sort of split that difference there and come back up, and you'll have a really nice secure stitch. So just do that all the way to the end. You can knot off your thread on the inside. You don't have to weave in your ends with thread, thankfully. You can just add a couple good knots and then cut it off. And then we do the same thing to the other side. You just want to make sure that when you add the other half of your zipper, you make sure you put it in the right direction. What I like to do is actually insert that second end first. Oop, make sure, that's why it's important. Make sure we've got the correct end. Do it with this end, just like you were putting on, your shirt or jacket here, and add, or rather pull up on the zipper just a little bit and then start sewing it in. And that will help make sure that it's lined up just right as you sew it inside your pouch. If you have trouble, I know I had trouble getting my needle through these sort of hard plastic ends, you can add a little dab of your clear drying craft glue between the end of the zipper and the pouch as well. Just sew them in well. These little extra ends, you can cut those off or fold them down into the pouch if you prefer. I actually just went ahead and cut them off, and your zipper will be all nicely installed right in the top of your pouch. So the very last thing to do is add this little bit of crochet that turns our zipper pull tab into our really cute straw. After making the boba and the smile, our brown yarn has one more job, making the straw zipper tab cover. We're going to go ahead, and now we're not going to be working in the round for the first time this project, so we can go ahead and put a slip knot on our hook. Then we're simply going to chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. There we go. And then we skip the chain closest to the hook and single crochet in each remaining chain across. I like to work into the back bottom hump, not the back loop, but rather the underneath hump. But you can work into whichever part of the chain you prefer. It really doesn't matter for this project. It's just a personal preference here. So since we skipped that first chain closest to the hook, we should have a total of 4 single crochets here as we stitch into that last chain right next to our slip knot. And there you can see it. 1, 2, 3, 4 single crochets. And that's it for row 1. So for rounds 2 through 4, we simply chain 1 and single crochet in each stitch across. We've got just a few quick rows here of single crochet, 4 stitches in each row. So we want to basically make a tiny little square, and then we're going to turn that into our straw cover. So here I'm finishing up row 2 right there. So I'll see you when we've added 2 more rows of single crochet. So here you can see I've just crocheted a little square in our brown yarn. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut my end, and I'm going to leave maybe a couple extra inches, but we don't need a whole lot here. 6 inches should be plenty. So then we can go ahead and pull up on that end right there. You can pull the end through to secure it if you'd like, but it's not necessary. I'm going to take my slightly longer end here and put it on my yarn needle. And then what we want to do is we want to sew this into a tube just like that. So if you prefer, you can actually weave in your shorter end first. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's make it look a little nicer here. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy. We just want to make sure it's all tucked up inside here so that it doesn't show on our finished straw cover. So we don't have to go too crazy. Going in opposite directions once or so should work, especially since there's going to be some glue on this portion. There we are. And then we'll go ahead and trim this one off. Oop, don't run away on me there. Trim this one off nice and short so that it doesn't show. So now let's go ahead and take our longer end here, and we're going to whip stitch our 4th row to our 1st row, the base of our 1st row. So basically just go ahead and fold it over here. We'll go through 1 stitch of the 1st row there right at the base, and then the top of the 1st stitch, or the last stitch of the last row there. Basically cinch them together. Next stitch and next stitch. Sometimes the yarn doesn't want to line up just right. We can just move that over and cinch it up. There we go. There's only 4 sets of stitches here, So pull that through. And there is our last one. Make sure we don't get that tangled up there. So with that, you can see we've basically crocheted a little tube. It's kind of hard to see in there. It's a little dark, but there we go. You can see just a little bit of light peeking through there. So with our final end, we do want to go ahead and bury this as well. Just going to run it right along the inside there. Where again, I know there's going to be a little bit of glue to hold that closed anyway. So we can go ahead and cut that one nice and short as well. So I'm going to give it a little tension before I cut it so that that end shrinks back up into the tube. So now all we need to do is take our zipper pull tab here. And at this point, it should be sewn into our project. Add just a little bit of this tacky glue, or again, whatever sort of craft glue you like to use. I add just a little bit to the inside of that, or a little bit to the end of the zipper, and then we slide that tube right on over our zipper. Give it a little bit of a squeeze, let the craft glue sort of work its way in there, let that sit and dry, and before you know it, it'll be nice and glued to your zipper pull and acting perfectly like the straw for your crochet boba tea. And that's how to crochet the Boba Tea Crochet Pouch. Once again, that's a free pattern you'll find on mooglyblog.com. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.